Good morning, GTS retail partners, and welcome to our Wednesday edition of the Retailer to Publisher webinar series. I'm Scott Baur. I'm your category manager for gaming specialty products, which includes role-playing games, miniature games, and gaming accessories like dice and dice towers and all the fun stuff that helps accentuate your gaming experience. And today we're privileged to be joined by some very valuable partners here at GTS Distribution, Paizo Publishing and Kobold Press. So we're very happy to have both Cosmo and Wolfgang on board for today's webinar. Both of them will be giving presentations and talking about their products in a moment. But before we do that, let me just go ahead and give you some information on how to operate within Zoom if you haven't. And I think most of us are familiar with Zoom now, given circumstances over the past year. So if you're not, you roll over your screen and you'll get a little bar down at the bottom if you're on a PC or Mac. And that gives you the option to press the chat button. And when you do that, a chat window will appear on your screen and you'll have the opportunity to select whether you want that message to go to all panelists, which is Cosmo, Wolfgang, and myself, or to all panelists and attendees. And that way everyone on the call can see your question and we'll either answer it in the chat window or we'll answer it verbally on screen. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation, but if you do have questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat window now while you are while you're there. So let me go ahead and pass the virtual baton over to Cosmo of Paizo Publishing, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. And thank you everyone for joining us. We have some really cool stuff to talk about today. I'm going to go over some of our products that are coming up in winter this year and a little look at what's coming up next year. Now, give me just a moment here while I get this slideshow up and running. All right. Now, I like to start things with a nice, interesting black screen so that everybody, has a chance to fall asleep. And, oh, wait, here we are. Thank you. Once again, my name is Cosmo. I'm with Paizo Inc., and we're going to take a look at what's coming up in winter and spring. First off, we've got something really cool coming in November. That's right. We have the Pathfinder Beginner Box. This is the best way to learn how to role play. And one of the cool things about the Beginner Box is I look at it, it's a starter set, of course, but I look at it less as a starter set and more like I look at it as a seed. This is the seed that you plant in your community to grow a community of gamers in your store. This thing comes, you see, it's got an MSRP of $39.99. It comes with everything you need to go from never having role played before in your life to rolling dice and killing goblins in like under an hour. The first thing you see when you open up this box is you see a sheet of paper that says, if you're by yourself and want to learn how to play, go to this page in this book. If you have a group and want to teach and want to run the game for a group, go to this page in this book. And then what follows is, if you're by yourself, you can go through a kind of choose your own adventure style solo adventure to start out playing. But what's I think even cooler is you go to that second part and it has step-by-step instructions for how to run the role-playing game for a group if you've never done it before. You can open up this book and start running a game right off the bat, because everybody knows the biggest roadblock to getting into role-playing is finding a GM. Well, this thing trains GMs as well as players. And it comes with everything you need. You've got the two books. It's got a GM book and a player book. It's got a load of pawns for all of the creatures in the adventures, as well as some extras. And it's got bases for the pawns. It's got a set of dice that are color-coded to the diagrams on the sheet, so it doesn't assume you know what a D8 is. It says This one, the blue one, is the D8, and you grab the blue one, and once again, everything is geared towards showing you how to play. And then it's also got a flip mat that goes with the adventure, but also is a bit generalized, because not only does this have pre-generated characters, but it's also got blank character sheets as well as instructions for how to design, build your own characters, and build your own game. This takes you into role playing in everything you need to get into role play. So you've played through the box. You've started down the road to learning how to role play. Where do you go next? Well, in December we have Troubles in Otari. This is an adventure that it's a series of low-level adventures in the book. It's a soft cover, $22.99, nice and easy. And this takes place in the same setting as the adventure in the beginner box. It is a continuation of sorts of your adventure in the beginner box. It's also a really nice low-level adventures for someone who just wants to start off with the actual book. But you can continue your adventure from the beginner box or just start here. And this comes with, this has an associated flip mat as well. Also coming in December, second edition pocket editions. We have the core rulebook pocket edition coming out in December, as well as the Bestiary. So if you want to jump in and get started, here is a nice, easy price point to get the full game. And this is the full game. These pocket editions is the soft cover edition, but it's just the book reduced by, I think, 72%. It's got everything that's in the full book. So in addition to being a great starter point for someone who doesn't want to jump in with the full $60 book, this is also a great option for someone who wants a second copy of the book, or who wants to buy, say, 3 or 4 copies to have for the table for their players, or to have a book that they take when they go outside to keep the nice hardcover back home and on the shelf. And then you see in January, we've got the Game Mastery Guide Pocket Edition and the Bestiary 2. And then in February will be the final of our released hardcovers, will be coming out in Pocket Edition with the Advanced Player's Guide Pocket Edition. So you've played through the beginner box, you've played through the Troubles in Otari. Where do you go next? Well, in January, we release the Abomination Vaults Adventure Path. This is a 3-volume adventure path. This is the first 3-volume adventure path that we've had for Pathfinder. We've had a lot of success with the 3-volume adventure paths in Starfinder, so now we're bringing it to Pathfinder. And the Abomination Vaults Adventure Path is a dungeon crawl, old school awesomeness. It is a mega dungeon that also happens to be right outside the city of Otari. So if somebody's just looking for a mega dungeon adventure path, we've got it for them, starting at about level 2 or 3, and takes them up to about level 10. Or if somebody's played through the beginner box, played through Troubles in Otari, and wants to know where to go next, well, they can step out just outside of the city. There is underneath a eerie landlocked lighthouse that glows with a baleful light, something terrible. And as they go in, they can discover that far beneath the lighthouse, evil is growing, and it's up to them to take it down. And then coming in February, we have the Lost Omens Ancestry Guide. So our Ancestry Guides are what in first edition we referred to as race guides, although we've changed that term. We now refer to it as Ancestry Guide because that's a much better term for what this actually encompasses. And the Lost Omens Ancestry Guide makes it so you can make your character and tie your character directly to the Lost Omens campaign setting. In the Age of Lost Omens, there's a whole world of monstrous races and other type of ancestries that you can be, including geniekin, androids, kitsune, sprites. These are all player options, and more fun player options are always great selling books. This also features new ancestries and versatile heritages for existing ancestries that so if you want to tie your character into the Lost Omens campaign setting using existing ancestry, this book will be great as well. And then coming in March, we have the Bestiary 3. And we'll be coming out with 3 versions of the Bestiary 3. We have the hardcover, as we always do, of course, the special edition, which has been something we've started with 2nd edition, where we release a special edition with the initial printing. And then we will be releasing a pocket edition as well. This will be the first time that we'll be releasing a pocket edition day and date with the hardcover. And as we found with our years of doing pocket editions for 1st edition, that the pocket editions we have not in our experience cannibalized any sales of the hardcover. They've been supplemental and sometimes enhanced sales of the hardcover. So we've decided that we're going to start releasing pocket editions along with the hardcovers, and we expect this to be a really highly sought after title. And then in April comes Malevolence. So our creative director, James Jacobs, who kind of initially made a lot of the bones of what has become the Lost Omens campaign setting. He's a horror movie guy. He's one of these guys that doesn't watch a lot of horror movies, doesn't watch a lot of movies, except watches all of the horror movies. And if you want to know any weird esoteric stuff about horror movie stuff, he knows it. And this is this horror movie fan doing a haunted house story. This house has stood abandoned on this lonely hilltop over the ruins of a once thriving town, and no one has lived in this town since a horrific storm flooded the town. So now something is growing inside this house, and your adventurers need to go in, discover what's going on inside this house, end it, and get out alive. And all of these things are going to be very, very difficult and very, very creepy. Horror themed adventures are always very popular, and this is a horror themed adventure done by a total horror fan. I'm super excited about this one. This one also has an associated flip mat to be released along with it. And it will be also sanctioned for use with our organized play program, so you can expect people to really be looking out for this one. And speaking of organized play adventures, coming in April, after the 3-volume Abomination Vaults adventure path, we will have another 3-volume adventure path called Fists of the Ruby Phoenix. So the Ruby Phoenix tournament is a martial arts tournament in our campaign setting. Think Enter the Dragon, a mysterious island. People invite martial artists from all around the world to come compete in this tournament once every couple of years and fight to the death on this island. And in this adventure path, your characters will be going to the Ruby Phoenix tournament. This is an adventure that starts out for 11th level characters and goes up from there. Now, a little bit of history, real world history about the Ruby Phoenix tournament. The Ruby Phoenix tournament was first released as a standalone adventure for 11th level characters in January 2012. This was a super popular adventure. It got sanctioned for organized play, and our organized play players went nuts over this adventure, so much so that by that our organized play's third season was actually called Year of the Ruby Phoenix, and this was the theme for an entire year of adventures in back in 2012, 2013. So what that means is this thing has deep roots in the community, and our organized play fans are just chomping at the bit to get their hands on this one. So I expect it to do very well. On the card side, we have Pathfinder cards are continue to be a great way to add a tactile aspect to your games. Adding that just little bit of immersion that, instead of saying you get this and this and this, you say you have, you get a card and it's something you can hold and put in your hand and keep, and like, this is my sword or whatever. In January, we've got the Magic Armaments deck coming out, and then in April, we have the Potions and Talismans deck. So no more having the player saying, oh yeah, I happen to have this one more healing potion. Well, no. How many cards do you have? Well, you've got 4 healing potion cards. That's how many you have. I was speaking earlier of pocket editions. Our first edition pocket editions are still in print. We still have people who love first edition, and we love first edition, and we're totally great if they want to keep playing it. So we make sure that we keep these books in print for as long as people keep buying them. Over on the Starfinder side, in November, we have the Alien Archive 4. The Alien Archives for Starfinder are roughly analogous to the Bestiaries in Pathfinder, but instead of just being antagonists, which would make this a GM book, a GM-only book, where it has been a core creative choice to make any monster or alien that even seems like it would be a reasonable player option to have a player option available for that alien. The idea being that for Starfinder, we want to get that Mos Eisley space cantina feel, where you walk through and just everywhere you look is a different crazy alien being just hanging out, and that's what we want to have. So this makes our Alien Archives into players' books as well as GM books. And when players get those cool, funky alien options, if they want to play a 6-legged space llama, we want them to play a 6-legged space llama. And if you're making your 6-legged space llama character, what are you going to do? Well, you need to play an adventure. And in November, we launched the Fly, Free, or Die Adventure Path. This is an adventure path, a 6-volume adventure path in which you play the adventurers play a team of plucky spacefarers just trying to make a living on the edge of the galaxy, going from place to place, just trying to get by. That might sound a little familiar, and I'm sure it's no accident that the dude on the cover is in fact wearing a brown coat. So Fly Free or Die Adventure Path launches in November, and make sure you check it out. So and now a word from our special guest. Founder and publisher of Kobold Press, Wolfgang Bauer has been a part of the tabletop RPG field since the 80s. And Wolfgang's here to talk about some of Kobold's current and upcoming titles. Take it away, Wolfgang.
Thank you, Cosmo. It's good to be here. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this morning. Kobold Press is doing great big things this year and fully loaded both for the winter holiday season. and with big plans for next summer as well. The biggest and boldest bet we've made is the Tome of Beast 2 for 5th edition. This is the follow-up to the original Tome of Beast from 4 years ago, and the Creature Codex from a couple of years ago. And it is, of course, a great big monster manual for 5th edition. And I can't say enough things about this. Monster books are always popular. The Tome of Beasts has had just incredible response from fans, and has stayed in print for years. So coming up with a sequel was pretty straightforward, as yeah, we're putting it on the schedule, but we've spent 2 years bringing it to life. The art throughout is stupendous, and we made a couple of lucky choices here in terms of what kinds of monsters are in Tome of Beast 2. One early bet was that we were going to expand on the choices for Arctic and wintry sorts of monsters. As it turns out, there's not a lot of those in the 5th edition core books, but with Rime of the Frost Maiden, it means that Tome of Beast 2 pairs up really well with that new adventure from Wizards of the Coast. So we've got about 30 Arctic monsters in this volume out of 400 some. We also made a bet on swamp monsters, marshes, and the like. So Ghosts of Salt Marsh get some nice support. It pairs well with that. And we did a whole lot of work on sort of dungeon monsters and dark and grim monsters that fit well in an Underdark adventure like Empire of the Ghouls, or the new Curse of Strahd special edition, compiled edition. So some of that was luck. Some of that was knowing what sorts of monsters GMs use most frequently. This book is going to be just a huge seller for us, and that's a November release. Let's see. Then there's the Warlock Grimoire 2 for 5th edition. This one is a compilation volume. Kobold Press runs a little Patreon where we put out zines, zines, little 6x9 black and white booklets, 6-7 times a year. But they're mostly a digital product. The print versions are really not that impressive, but they're cute and fun, and our super fans love getting that. But for most people, they wait till the Grimoire comes out. Grimoire 1 went out of print a few months after we shipped it, and Grimoire 2 has been paired with a reprint of Warlock Grimoire 1. It contains player options. It contains lore and history. It's got a very dark fantasy vibe to it. This one happens to have a bunch of lore on Baba Yaga, which fits neatly into D&D mythos in a number of ways. And a lot of the Warlock material is split between monsters, items, and history. It's useful primarily in the Midgard campaign setting and similar darker fantasy campaign settings. It fits well with things like Eberron and Greyhawk. So it's not in a gigantic print run. We expect to sell through it in a reasonable period of time. It may become mildly collectible at some point. I don't really know. But it does collect 9 issues worth of the zine plus an entire new issue's worth of fresh material. And it's out in December. And then, of course, we have support material. Going back to the first Tome of Beasts, we have the pocket edition. We also have the hardcover edition of the first Tome of Beasts. I expect to see a lot of activation of people who pick up Tome of Beast 2, say, wow, this is great, and wonder why they don't own Tome of Beast 1. They may pick it up in pocket. They may pick it up in hardcover. Either way, it's sort of a natural pairing, those two. And, I'm sure you will see people picking up Volume 1 and Volume 2 if they can swing it at the same time. There's also Tome of Beast pawns, which are just like Pathfinder pawns. They do not, at that price point, include a set of pawn stands. But of course, you can use the Pathfinder pawn stands with Tome of Beast pawns. They work well together. And there is also, not shown here, Tome of Beast 2 pawns available as well. And one other supplemental piece, there's something called the Book of Layers or the Tome of Beast 2 Layers, which is small maps and adventures using the monsters from these bestiaries. The other book here you'll see on the right, the Complete Kobold Guide to Game Design, the second edition, is an expanded version of a 6x9 soft cover that appeals to every game master who's ever wanted to design more of their own, right? Their own homebrew, their own monsters. How do you get started? What sort of things do you think about? The first edition won a gold Emmy and stayed in print for like 6 or 7 years. And we said, boy, is it time for an update. So the Complete Kobold Guide to Game Design second edition is that update. New chapters, new writers, revisiting some of the old topics. Things do change over 6 or 7 years in the role-playing field. It is part of the larger series of Kobold Guides. You may or may not be familiar with things like the Kobold Guide to World Building or the Kobold Guide to Game Mastery. And that leads me to our spring release, which I don't even know that we've announced all that much. But in April, we expect to release the Kobold Guide to Monsters. It will cover monster design, everything we've learned from Tome of Beast 1 and Tome of Beast 2, and a whole lot of advice to game masters for creating monsters that are effective, memorable, balanced, playable, and useful throughout the life of their campaigns. All of the Kobold guides come at that $20 price point and the smaller 6x9 formats. So they make pretty good impulse buys and they make great gifts for budding game designers. So if part of your customer base is people who are always homebrewing, the Kobold guides are for that segment, those people who are always spinning up their own ideas. The other title, which I guess I should have told Cosmo before this meeting, is you reminded me with your discussion of the Mega Dungeon, the 3 installment adventure path. We have coming next summer in July, the Scarlet Citadel Mega Dungeon, Classic Dungeon, written by Steve Winner and done very much in the old school for 5th edition. It is for levels 1 to 10, and the Scarlet Citadel is going to be a hardcover single volume with an associated map folio next July. So we'll maybe present that in a little more detail next time.
Cool.
But yeah, I think there's, I mean, come on. We're writing for the Dungeons and Dragons game, right? There's got to be more dungeons. And surprisingly enough, Kobold Press has never done a dungeon of this size. We tend to do, you know, things that are playable in one night or shorter, smaller dungeons. This sort of 8 levels, 1 to 10, full campaign sort of dungeon with factions and deep lore and big, beautiful battle maps. Oh my goodness, I can't say enough good things about the cartography. It's not something we've done before, but I think it's going to be very popular. And being in a single volume hardcover means it's sort of one of the nicest physical appearance adventure books we've put together. So we'll probably share the cover art on a future call. But yeah, that gets us into spring and summer releases for next year from Kobold Press. I think that covers everything.
Cool.
Yeah. Cosmo, should we take questions? Are we kind of at that point?
Well, I have one more thing that I'd like to talk about our June and July stuff real quick. I've
Do
got
it.
one last thing that I wanted to bring up. Coming in June, we have the Lost Omens Mwangi Expanse book. This is going to be a 312-page book that will be our deepest dive in all of Pathfinder's history into the Mwangi Expanse, which is our fantasy analog of Africa. That's actually home to the setting's oldest magical university. And off of that, coming in July, we have the Strength of Thousands adventure path. This is an adventure path that will take characters from 1st to 20th level, and it's actually set in the world's oldest magic academy, the Magayamba Magic Academy, and your characters will play students at the school, and we're calling it the Strength of Thousands, and this comes from the school's motto. Each teacher and student stands on the shoulders of thousands who have come before, so the weight of reputation and responsibility rests squarely on your hero's shoulders. And yeah, I think now would be an excellent time. I have been Cosmo. Pierce is here. Wolfgang is here. And now, yeah.
Great.
I'd like to
And I'll
open it
just-
up for questions.
Excellent. I'll just pick it up from what's in the chat now. And just so our retailers know, I've been putting the codes into the chat window for things that we have on there. So if you have interest in the topics that have already been discussed, you can just copy and paste that into another document for your own records so you have that. It was a question about, for our Kobold Press, about Warlock Grimoire 1 and whether or not that's still in print and available.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. It actually ran out of print, the first printing, within a few months of release. But when it came time to do Warlock Grimoire 2, I felt we were probably overdue for a reprint. So we actually reprinted Warlock Grimoire 1 at the same time that we printed Warlock Grimoire 2. So both are now available and in print again, in the case of Warlock Grimoire 1.
Great. So we'll have to get Warlock Grimoire 1 reactivated in our system and made available for order. So we'll make sure that that's available to you.
Thanks, Scott.
Sure. The second comment about Kobold Press, it says, we love Kobold Press books, particularly Midgard. It's one of the best written 5e worlds out there to date. We play D&D 7 times a week right now, and all of our tables are currently in Midgard. So everybody's playing Midgard. So
I'd love to hear that.
So I just put up our codes for the Midgard Sagas and Midgard World Book. So those are in the chat now if you have interest in those.
Yes.
Wolfgang, do you want to talk a little bit about Midgard?
Sure. All of the products I talked about today, with the exception of the Warlock Grimoire, are meant to be, you know, generic utility, use in any campaign. But we do have the Midgard World Book and the Midgard campaign setting as the Kobold Press default setting. And we publish a fair volume of material for it. It's a dark fantasy world full of shadow magic, full of ley line magic, full of clockwork magic. It draws on a lot of sort of dark fantasy tropes, and it has both a, I mean, with a name like Midgard, you got to think Vikings, right? And Ragnarok and all that. But it has a wide variety of cultures. It's not purely a Norse setting. And large chunks of it come out of my old home campaign, but other chunks come from Jeff Grubb, the writer behind Spelljammer, for instance, and Brandon Hodge, who wrote some of the finest APs for Pathfinder. And so it's had a wealth of talent behind it, and we just keep pushing it as the right sort of world for somebody who likes darker fantasy. I'm real proud of it. We have a couple of releases slated for it, and that Scarlet Citadel Mega Dungeon I was talking about is set by default in Midgard. Although our policy has been from the beginning that adventures set in Midgard need to be designed in such a way that it's easy to rip them up and move them into Galarian or the Forgotten Realms or Eberron, right? They should be fairly easy to transport. And something like the Scarlet Citadel dungeon, it's easier to move a dungeon than it is an overland caravan adventure, let's say, right? So, but yeah.
Portability is important in your dungeons.
Yes. Well, thank you for giving me a chance to burble about Midgard. I'll take it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Retailers, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and put those into the chat. There's not a lot in there right now. That's pretty much where we're at in terms of questions to this point. So is there any other topics you want to cover while you have the floor? Cosmo?
I think I hit all the highlights, but
and that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
If we're good, we're good. So great.
Yeah.
Oh, I should mention one thing, which isn't on our slides, but it is a fairly recent release. Deep Magic for 5th edition. It's a book of magic spells, archetypes, subclasses, all spellcasting classes get representation. And 5th edition basically gets a huge 700 new spells and something like 20 new clerical domains in Deep Magic for 5th edition. It's a title that we did as a digital series, like little PDF releases every few months for years. And people kept asking, when does this turn into a book? When does this turn into a book? Why won't you take our money? Please make Deep Magic into a book. And eventually, even thick-skulled kobolds get the hint, and we did it. We got Kim Mohan of Dragon Magazine fame to be the editor on it. We got Steve Winter to be the developer, and it's a big, beautiful book of all new magic, which is available now. It just came out in late August, I want to say, and it should be available.
Yeah, September, I think. I have mid-September on our.
Or September, okay.
But yeah, and that code is now in the chat window as well for anyone who wants to take a look at that book. You can get that there. All right. Well, I want to thank Wolfgang for being here, in particular for Cosmo and Pierce also for joining us. Thank you guys very much for joining our crew and giving out a lot of great information about upcoming releases, some things that we need to get into the system that we don't have just yet for the July and June releases, all that fun stuff. And then
That's coming.
Yeah, right. We just haven't been solicited. So everything we do have in the system is in that chat window. So if you want to take a look at some of that, go ahead and get that copied into a Word document or something like that so you can go back and reference it. To our retail partners, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your day. We really appreciate your attendance here and the questions and comments that you put into the chat. It really helps. We want to make sure that we have a platform here where you can talk directly with our vendor partners, share ideas, share information, and really kind of get a sense that there's a real partnership being built here. So we're happy to present these opportunities for you to do that. Hope you'll take advantage of those and take advantage of any other opportunities you come across as well. Once again, thank you all for being here. And I will go ahead and return the rest of your day to you. I'm sure you have a lot to do. So thank you very much for your time and have a great time until next time. We'll see you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks, Scott, for having us.
You're very welcome.